Long before the rain reaches your yard, your birds already know where they're going. The cardinal leaves first, then the chickadees, then the robin that had been hopping across the lawn only moments ago. By the time the first real drops begin tapping against the leaves, the feeder is empty. The branches are still, and your yard feels strangely abandoned. Most people assume the birds simply flew somewhere else, somewhere beyond the fence, beyond the neighborhood, gone until the weather improves. But in many cases, the truth is much stranger. Some of those birds may be less than 30 feet away, hidden so completely that you could walk past them and never know they were there. That is the part most people never see. It starts on a familiar morning. Maybe you're standing by the kitchen window with a cup of coffee. The feeder is full. A bright cardinal flashes through the shrubs, chickadees chatter from the maple tree. Somewhere in the distance, a robin pulls a worm from the grass. Everything feels ordinary. Then the light changes. The clouds gather, the wind shifts direction. And almost as if they received a message no one else heard, the birds begin to disappear, one by one. Not in panic, not randomly, with purpose. Where do they go? That's the question. This reveals something remarkable about the birds that visit your yard, because they are not simply reacting to rain. They are following a map built from memory, survival, and experience. Some of the places they retreat to have been used for years. Some may have sheltered generations of birds through storms, cold fronts, and sudden downpours. Some may have saved a bird's life during a storm, long before you ever noticed that bird at your feeder. Over the next few minutes, we're going to follow them into that hidden world. We'll uncover the places they trust, the decisions they make before the rain arrives, and why they return to the same shelters again and again. And if you've ever watched your own backyard fall silent before a storm, stay close. You may discover that what looked like an empty yard was actually one of the busiest and most carefully planned parts of a bird's day. Rain doesn't erase the birds. It reveals their hidden map. And once you see it, you'll never watch a storm the same way again. To understand where those birds went, you have to understand something most people never see. Every adult bird carries an invisible map. Not a paper map. Not a simple memory of a single tree. A living map of its world. Inside that map are places with different jobs. One place for food, another for watching for danger, another for sleeping, another for escaping a hawk. And somewhere on that map, a handful of locations reserved for bad weather. Researchers studying bird navigation and spatial memory have discovered that many species remember far more about their surroundings than we once believed. Work supported by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology and studies from the University of Cambridge have helped reveal how birds recognize landmarks, learned territories, and repeatedly return to important locations. To a bird, a backyard is not just a yard. It is a network. Every shrub, fence post, tree trunk, and evergreen branch has meaning. Think back to that cardinal that vanished before the rain arrived. It did not simply fly away and hope for the best. In many cases, it was moving toward a location it already knew, a place it had evaluated many times before, a place connected to the rest of its territory, like a familiar room inside a house. The same is true for a blue jay. From your window, it may look as if the bird randomly appears in different parts of the yard, but from the bird's perspective, those locations are linked together. The tall oak is a lookout tower. The feeder is a food stop. The dense canopy near the back fence is a weather shelter. The bird moves between them so often that the route becomes part of its daily routine. Chickadees may be even more impressive. Despite their tiny size, they can remember the locations of hundreds, sometimes thousands, of food caches and important landmarks. Every flight adds information to their mental map. Every safe escape strengthens it. Every successful shelter becomes a place worth remembering. But here is where the story becomes even more surprising. Most people assume the best shelter is the driest shelter. That sounds logical. Yet for many birds, staying hidden is often more important than staying completely dry. A dense evergreen that blocks sight lines may be chosen over a more open location that offers better protection from rain. A thick tangle of branches may win over a larger space because predators have a harder time seeing inside it. In other words, when the sky turns dark, birds are not asking, "Where can I stay dry?" They are asking, "Where can I stay safe?" And that single difference explains why so many of them disappear into places we walk past every day without ever noticing. Now imagine the storm from the bird's point of view. You hear rain and think about getting inside. A bird experiences something very different. For a small bird that weighs less than a handful of coins, the real danger is often not the water itself. It is the loss of heat. It is the wind. It is the energy required to stay warm when the weather suddenly changes. That is why the moment rain arrives, the rules change. A bird that spent the morning singing from an exposed branch may suddenly disappear into cover. A bird that seemed bold and active only minutes earlier becomes careful and quiet. The goal is no longer finding food. The goal is protecting energy. This is where one of the most fascinating behaviors appears. If you have ever spotted a bird sitting out during a rainstorm, you may have noted it looks different. Taller, stiller, almost uncomfortable. Researchers studying weather-related bird behavior have observed what many birders call a rain posture. The bird pulls its head closer to its body. Its feathers tighten. Its bill often points slightly forward. From a human perspective, it may look miserable. But that bird is not giving up. It is managing a problem. Feathers are remarkable structures. They trap layers of air close to the body, creating insulation that helps maintain temperature. During rain, birds carefully manage those feathers to protect as much trapped warmth as possible. Every movement matters. Every gust of wind matters. A sheltered location that reduces wind exposure can make a tremendous difference. This is why many birds choose thick vegetation. Not because it is perfectly dry, but because it blocks moving air. To a bird, cold wind can be more costly than rain itself. And here is where things become even more interesting. Not every species responds the same way. Humans often think of weather as one event. Birds experience it as many different opportunities and challenges at once. Take the American robin. While many birds retreat deeper into cover, robins are often seen moving across lawns during light rain or immediately after a shower. The reason is surprisingly practical. Rain changes the behavior of earthworms. Moist soil and reduced surface dryness can make worms easier to find. For a robin, a rainy morning may actually improve feeding conditions. What looks like bad weather to one species can look like opportunity to another. Then there is the hummingbird. At first glance, this tiny bird seems like the last creature that should remain active during rain. Yet hummingbirds frequently continue feeding whenever conditions allow. Flowers still contain nectar. Energy demands remain high. Waiting too long can be costly. Researchers studying hummingbird behavior have documented how these birds adjust their activity around weather rather than simply stopping altogether. They may seek temporary shelter during heavier downpours, then quickly return to feeding between periods of rain. In some situations, there may even be less competition because other birds have already disappeared into cover. This is the part many people miss when they look out at a rainy backyard. They see weather, the birds see choices. One bird protects energy, another searches for food, another waits quietly in shelter. Another takes advantage of a brief opportunity that only exists because the storm arrived. The same rain falls across the entire yard, yet each species experiences a completely different world. And the deeper researchers look into bird behavior, the clearer that becomes. A storm does not create one story. It creates many stories at the same time. The cardinal hidden deep in an evergreen, the chickadee conserving warmth inside a sheltered cavity, the robin searching the lawn, and the hummingbird returning to a flower between showers are all responding to the same weather. But they are following very different strategies. The rain has not changed the world equally for all of them. There is another reason birds return to certain places, and it has very little to do with the place itself. It has everything to do with what happened there. Imagine a northern cardinal during a powerful summer storm. The wind rises, the trees sway, rain moves sideways through the yard. The bird leaves its usual perch and slips deep into an arbor vitae near the edge of the property. From the outside, it looks like an ordinary shrub. Nothing special, nothing remarkable. But for the cardinal, something important happens. The storm passes. The bird stays warm enough. It stays protected. It survives. The next time dark clouds gather, that experience matters, not because the bird has fallen in love with the shrub, not because the shrub is the prettiest place in the yard, because it worked. This is where bird behavior becomes surprisingly relatable. Humans do something similar. We remember roads that got us home during a snowstorm. We remember shelters that kept us safe. We remember places where things turned out well. Birds appear to do much the same. Researchers studying site fidelity and spatial learning have found that many bird species repeatedly return to successful locations. Work supported by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology and observations from researchers associated with institutions, including the University of Oxford, have helped reveal how birds build long-term relationships with specific areas within their territories. What looks random to us often reflects years of accumulated experience to the bird. The cardinal returns in autumn. It returns during winter. It returns again during spring. Each successful visit strengthens the memory. Over time, that location becomes more than part of a territory. It becomes a trusted reference point, and the cardinal is not alone. Across the bird world, many species show remarkable loyalty to places that consistently provide safety. Scientists call some of these behaviors site fidelity and roost fidelity. The terms sound technical, but the idea is simple. If a location repeatedly helps a bird survive, the bird is more likely to use it again. This is one reason some bird watchers notice the same species appearing in the same corner of a yard year after year. The bird may not remember every detail the way humans do, but it remembers enough. It remembers where danger was lower. It remembers where shelter worked. It remembers where the outcome was good. And here is the part most people never consider. You thought birds return because they remember the location, but many times they return because they remember the outcome. The location is only the address. The outcome is the reason. That difference changes everything. Suddenly, the yard looks different. The arbor vitae is not just landscaping. The dense shrub near the fence is not just decoration. The old evergreen by the driveway is not just a tree. To a bird, these places may be chapters in a survival story, written over months or even years. Every successful storm adds another page. Every safe night reinforces the lesson. Every return confirms the choice. And little by little, a simple backyard becomes something much larger. It becomes a landscape filled with remembered experiences. A place where certain locations have earned trust. A place where the next generation of decisions is often guided by the results of the last one. Long after the rain has ended, those memories remain. And they continue shaping where birds go when the sky begins to darken once again. The next time a storm moves across your neighborhood, you may find yourself looking at your yard a little differently. Not because the weather changed, because your understanding changed. The feeder is still the same. The fence is still the same. The trees, shrubs, and corners of the yard are still exactly where they were before. But now you know that some of those ordinary places may mean something very different to the birds that visit them. That dense evergreen near the property line may not simply be part of the landscaping. It may be a place that has protected generations of birds from wind and cold. That old cavity in a tree trunk may not just be a hole. It may be a shelter that has been used again and again when conditions turned difficult. That quiet corner behind the shed may be part of a survival map that exists completely outside human notice. And perhaps the most rewarding part is that you can start seeing evidence of this yourself. The next time rain is in the forecast, pay attention to where the birds disappear before the storm arrives. Watch where they reappear when the clouds begin to break. Notice which tree seems to attract the most activity. Notice whether the same shrubs are used in summer, winter, spring, and fall, or whether the birds change locations as the seasons change. These small observations can reveal patterns that many people never notice. Over time, your yard begins to tell a story. Not just about birds, but about how wildlife uses space, memory, and experience to survive. And there is something quietly humbling about that. You do not own those birds. They belong to the wider world. They make their own decisions. They choose their own paths. Yet your yard may still play a role in their story. A shrub you planted years ago, a tree you almost removed, a corner you rarely think about. Any one of those places may have become important to a creature weighing only a few ounces. Part of what we know comes from decades of ornithology research and careful scientific study. Part comes from generations of birdwatchers who spent countless hours observing the natural world. And part remains a mystery that researchers are still working to understand. Science can explain many of the reasons birds seek shelter and return to familiar places. But the feeling of seeing a cardinal reappear on the same branch after a storm is something each person experiences in their own way. Maybe that is why these moments stay with us. The birds were never gone. The rain simply showed you where trust lives.